Good afternoon. Today I want to tell you a story about farming. And not just one farm, but this story weaves into its fabric the tale that could be about any farmer. As I look back over a decade of farming, I've begun to reflect on what drove me down that road. As the years have gone by, I've begun to see that dreams are really the beginning of powerful moments of change. And if you trust in them, life can open up in unexpected ways. For me, farming was that dream that allowed me to engage in the bigger picture of life. I am jumping ahead a little bit. It was years before I believed I was a farmer or even thought of myself as a farmer. First, there were 1,000 decisions to be made and a million worries. And the first time I saw this piece of land, I screeched my car to a halt. And I got out and I stood there and I looked at this deserted piece of property. No one had lived on it in 50 years. And I thought, maybe, just maybe, there was a life waiting for me here that would be something more than what I'd been stumbling through for years. And so my story begins. I was 35 years old, and I fell in love with a piece of property. And no one was more surprised than myself to find out that passion had come from the earth itself. And I don't know what made me trespass onto that land. I climbed over the fence, and I dug my feet into the dirt, and then I laid in the grass. I was surrounded by cattle, and I curled my fingers around the blades, and I thought, I am going to convince my husband, Eric, to buy this place. And I'm going to convince him that there's a remarkable life waiting for us here. The idea of being a farmer didn't even cross my mind at that point. I didn't really know anything about farmers. I didn't know what a farmer did, but I did know that desire was going to catapult me down a road I had no way of turning back from. And so this life that I'd been searching for to have meaning in took me down a road that turned into a journey, and the life worth living, it came with a vengeance. It took a couple of years of sweet nagging, and eventually Eric agreed to buy this farm. It wasn't even a farm then, just some bare land in the middle of nowhere, and we moved on to it with our kids. It was like a movie. We stood at the gate with our suitcases in our hand and our children, and we had this great dream. We were going to camp on it for the summer and build our house. But it was the late 90s, and I don't know if many of you remember that moment, but the stock market crashed, and suddenly we were broke. And more than just broke, we were in serious debt, and we were scared. There was nothing we could do. We'd sold our home. This was it. We kept our jobs. We had those. We sent our kids to the local school. We rented trailers and moved into them. And we lived in those for 4 years. My mother did a lot of crying. She was constantly saying that she would give us her home if we would just stop being nuts. And our kids were constantly on the verge of mutiny. And I think at about the third year, Eric really began to think I was seriously crazy. But we had a great neighbor then. He used to come and check on us periodically. His name was Don Ritchie. And he came over to the farm at about the third year, and he sat us down, and he said, what are you two going to do? When are you going to stop feeling sorry for yourselves and build your house? And as all professional complainers do, I gave him all the reasons why it was impossible. We'd hit a wall, it wasn't going to work, we were discouraged, we'd given up. We bit off more than we could chew. And he said to me, he was pointing his finger at me, you have to get on with your plans, even when they seem impossible. You don't have money, you'll build your house anyway. And in fact, I'm going to help you build that house. I'm coming back in an hour with a tractor. We're digging the footings for your home. And he did. He came back in an hour. He dug the footings for our home. And then I don't know what really happened. Something sort of snapped, like this cosmic energy just opened up. And 30 days later, we had a construction loan. And I thought to myself, boy, this land is not going to give us a break. It's going to teach us from the very beginning that we're going to have to be brave, and we're going to need our friends around us. And so we built a little house. We planted olive trees, we raised chickens, and we began to talk about what it would be to be a farmer. What would it look like to grow food for people and feed them? It seemed like such a simple idea, and we worked so hard at it. And we made endless mistakes. We raised thousands of chickens and eggs, and we sold them to shops and restaurants all over the Bay Area. And we'd make deliveries, and then we'd sigh of relief, and then this big panic about what to do for next week's deliveries. I don't know what was to remember all the success of our little farm, though there were many. I guess it's just human nature that we tend to remember more vividly the drama. Fires, floods, wild dogs, disease. I can tell you candidly today that there were times I would just walk in the field and do my chores and cry. It was so hard. And when people asked me why our food was so expensive, I wanted to drag them outside with me to work for a day. Farming is no small or tender thing. It's a lot of hard work. And there's endless days and years even, when the dream is just a whisper as you collapse into bed. And growing food is so challenging that you can hardly breathe. And that sat within me for a long time. And suddenly I understood hard work was okay, that our food had value from the endless hours of labor that we put into it. And not just us, every farmer. Farmers that were walking across their land, working long, hard days into the night, planting, harvesting, building their farms. Men and women connected by tiny invisible threads that tied them to the earth. And me, alone in my field, at night, I was part of a history of agriculture that spanned the ages. Hundreds of farmers walking across their land, picking up baling wire and fixing irrigation lines. Long list of chores that would never get done, but they were keeping farming alive with every gesture. How our one little farm swam in so much drama, I can't tell you, but when I got discouraged, I would go see my dad. I'd lay my head in his lap like a child. My dad had taught me that there's 3 things you need in life to have a life of purpose: something to do, something to love, and something to hope for. He would ask me, "Are you ready to give up?" Stupidly, I'd always say no, kind of muffle it. And he'd pat my head, and he'd say, "Then find a way. Don't give up." And you know, when you're in the middle of an adventure like that, you need someone to believe in you. And you need somebody to tell you to keep going, dust you off, and push you back out the door with a kiss. And you march forward. There were sweet moments. I mean, I hate to make this sound like all drudgery. There were sweet moments. At 3 in the morning, when Eric and I would go to collect chickens for the market, and the stars filled the sky, and that soft quiet rolls through your land, and you're standing there in a field, and I would think, we figured it out. We're so smart. And then we would work 18 straight hours. And our farm caught on fire 3 times. Can you even believe that? Like, who does that happen to? The first one turned our world upside down. We fumbled for our shoes and our clothes to get dressed while flames were charging across the farm, and we yelled to our son to come with us and our daughter to stay in the house. And we ran that slow motion run. You think you'll never get there, and your heart's pounding, and it's going to explode in your chest. You're just sure of it. And I'll never forget the light of the flames in my son's eyes as he said, "We have no more water. There's no pressure." And Eric jumps on a tractor to build a fire break. And I turn around and there's my daughter. I'm not leaving you alone. That night, 1,000 baby chicks died, and the chicken houses we built the day before burned to the ground, and our old barn was gone. 3 angels stepped out of the night. They were remarkable. They were slightly drunk, but I wasn't worrying about that. They fought by our side as if their lives depended on it. And hundreds of firefighters came to put out the blaze. And when it was done, the land charred and everyone exhausted, our farm was still standing. I became a farmer. And so, farming's hard, but you don't give up. And life is filled with challenges, and you accept them, and you face them, and you're brave. And I promise you, farmers are brave. And when it's all said and done, the things you thought mattered at the beginning don't count a damn. Pride and ego and the need for recognition don't mean anything anymore. The simpler things come to the forefront, whatever your passion is. But for a farmer, pulling a carrot out of the ground, that's perfect, that you planted that seed, or collecting eggs from hens that you raised. Farms are born of those tender moments and are built on sweat and tears, and they succeed from the love and support of communities that stand up and tell you not to quit and jump in and help you rebuild and come to your farm to lend a hand. And these are the lessons life teaches you if you're listening, that you don't have to work so hard and you don't have to struggle alone. And the best success is the one you share with others. So our little farm continues to this day. We do things differently. We're planting lavender fields and more olive trees, and still trying to find out how to feed people and what does it mean to build a farm. The work may never get easier. Farmers accept that. The dreams are wild things. They have a crazy heart. But if you are brave and you believe in what you're doing, you'll follow the path that journey offers you. I'll tell you a secret about farmers. Farmers just want to plant their fields and tend to their animals and walk their dirt and feed people. And farmers have stories to tell, big stories that linger behind their tired eyes and their smiles. So ask them what they're thinking and what their lives are like. And when you give thanks for the food you eat each day, thank a farmer. You know, philosophers for 1,000 years have talked about a life of purpose is one of service to others, and I truly believe that farmers fulfill that ideal. Find them, honor them, buy their food. Farmers cover the landscape, working hard and planning for the future. Join their dream. Thank you.